Again, good morning, everybody. As the Vice Chairman, I'd like to open this meeting. And first of all, we're honored that we have our new chairman coming in January 1 of the Board of County Commission, Dave Eggers, in the back. And next month, he'll be sitting up at the front. So welcome. We're glad to see you. I'd like to ask everybody to introduce themselves, starting over here on our right.
Good morning. My name is Chuck Prather, downtown St. Petersburg, the Birchwood Inn.
Good morning. Doreen Moore, TRS, Travel Resort Services.
Frank Hibbard, the mayor of Clearwater.
Russ Kimball, of course, Sheraton Sankey.
Good morning. Steve Hayes, Visit St. Pete, Clearwater.
Michael Lazos, County Attorney's Office.
Good morning, Rick Reisman, Mayor of the City of St. Petersburg.
Melinda Pletcher, the Commissioner for the City of St. Pete Beach.
Trisha Rodriguez, the Tropics Boat Tours and the Clearwater Ferry.
Bill Henderson, Starlight Cruises.
Yeah, way back here, Tony Satterfield, Alden Suites. I don't know who I offended. Normally I offend during the meeting, but apparently I did it before we even got started today. So, yes, yeah.
We'll accept your apologies, Tony.
Thank you.
And we'll turn this meeting over to the chair.
Move for approval, November 18th meeting.
Thank you.
I second it.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Do you have who that is? Because I missed it. Okay. Doreen Moore and Mayor Kreisman. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. All right. Do we have any public comment this morning? No? Okay. Well, I will turn it over to Steve then for a finance committee.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And again, previously we had the subcommittees meet prior to the normal TDC meeting, and after a great discussion, not only in the last finance meeting, but also in the marketing meeting, we've said, let's make it as part of this meeting here, but have dedicated time to talk about those two specific areas. So this month, we're talking on the finance side. So I think the first thing we need to do is there's minutes from the last finance meeting. Right. If we could get approval for those minutes, and that was from the October 21st meeting.
I move for approval.
Second.
I heard a motion from Chuck and a second from Phil. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Passes. All right, latest financial report. So in your packet of information, you have a 2-page sheet that is our finances for the month of November of 2020. In that, I'm going to go through the revenue and then the expenses and really just look at areas where we may be way under budget or we may be over budget. On the revenue side, at this point, we just got the TDT numbers in for October. So it's not reflected on this report yet because it literally came in about a week ago. The October revenues were down 13.3% compared to October of 2019. Basically, it was 3.53 million versus 4 million. For fiscal year 20, just in case we had not covered it, we finished the year at 48.4 million, which was 11 million to the good. After, again, we had a projection of being about 37 million from a total standpoint. So it was actually a lot better. I think a comment I made the other day in one of the local media was to to celebrate only being down 13%. You normally wouldn't be saying that, but in this case, that is good. And again, that would be for the first month of the fiscal year. The other item that was on here in terms of a CVB revenue was for co-op sales, and essentially we do not have any through the first 2 months of the fiscal year. And that is the fact is that we don't have opportunities for the industry to go do things at this point. And again, part of that is as our industry continues to recover and we can go to what our normal trade shows or our normal travel areas, that has not been able to happen. So that revenue has not come in. So again, that's where we are on the revenue side. On personnel services, we should be at roughly about 16% of the budget. And right now, under personnel, we're at 12.7%. So we're a little below our target, but that's a good thing. Under the operating expenses, there are a number of different areas I wanted to cover here. Under other contractual services, the big number there has to do with Creative Pinellas, and that we just had the agreement with them approved by the County Commission yesterday. And so we will be working closely with Barbara St. Clair to go through and get their funding over to them, and that'll bring that number up in line. When you look at repairs, maintenance, printing, office supplies, those are all lower than the 16%. And part of that is the fact is that, again, we have offices where we have staff working from home, so you have less need for the not only the repairs or maintenance, but also the printing costs and the office supplies. So I think we have enough that we had from last year held over that we're able to accommodate folks. Same thing if you look at training and education as well as travel. Both of those, again, are way under budget. And again, primarily due to the fact is like on travel, that we're not traveling, or it's extremely limited because there's a lot of shows that are not happening. They are actually going virtual. And the same thing from training and education, where we might go to, and I'll use Meeting Planners International as an example of attending a conference for them, and would come under education. It's being done in a virtual format, or it's not happening. Again, we're starting to see that pick up, as we look forward, especially as we go through after the new year, and then and really everything else is pretty much on target. So for operations, the one that's over a little bit is PC purchases under 1,000, and that is equipment that we're getting staff and working to go through, and so they're able to work better from home or in another location. So total operating expenses and capital outlay, we're at 11.64%, again below below where we need to be. Under the promotional expenses, direct programming, when we get to advertising, on that, we have expended dollars. They just has not hit the budget yet. So those will be catching up. Under elite events, again, it's another one where they're happening. We have just not gone through and reimbursed them for those expenses. But that will happen, and if I remember correctly, based on what was approved by you as well as the County Commission of the events, there's been a couple where there's been some changes in the dollar amount. Again, as people are looking ahead to their events and whether they go through and have them, we may see some changes there, not additions, but really would be where we're not pay or not compensating it because the event doesn't happen. Under chamber visitor services support, we're at 62%. On that, we actually go through and we pay for all the promotional programs that they do up front. And so that has been paid out to the chambers. The back end of that will be on the staffing side, and there will be 2 different report periods where they go through to be reimbursed. So we're on target, really on target there. When you look at the digital marketing contract, again, below the 16%, but again, we're buying the media. It's just it has not come in this point where it would go through to hit the books. Under direct sales, you'll go through and see, again, we're at 2.27%. Again, as the same reason around travel is we have some expenses. When we did the budget and all this, we were hopeful that we would be returning to what I will call the new normal as quickly as possible, and I think that we're getting there. It's just not happening in the first quarter of the year. Staff is able to take and participate in virtual items, and we talked about that last month at our meeting where we were able to participate in an international show via total virtual versus going through and being in person. We're also seeing that on the meeting side as well. So again, it's one that we will start expending some of those dollars, but again, we based it on returning to the new normal a lot quicker. So total promotional expense at this point right now, we've expended about 3.4% of our budget. Are there questions related to our financial statement?
Madam Chair, question?
Yes, please.
Good morning, Steve. Just 2 questions. Can you go and give us a little more on what intra-governmental services are? We've spent quite a bit there. And the second is international sales. We've expended a fair amount there with, obviously, we're kind of locked down from an international travel standpoint, so explain that one to me.
Thank you, Chuck. I'm going to do the international one first, and maybe I can get Terry to come up to the podium. We'll talk on the first item. On the international side, we have 2 offices, where I should say we had 2 offices. One with Vanessa and out of the UK. She retired and closed the business, and so therefore we have not done anything with that office. For the German market right now, we still have Marion on board, and that from that aspect, she is also helping us out anything that we have overseas. So she's giving us a lot of intel of what's happening in that market, also talking to a lot of the travel trade and keeping up on what they're able to do. The virtual show that we did, I think I mentioned last month, she was on that in talking to our customers. She is also letting us know what's happening in terms of what we need to be ready when those floodgates do open, and we do feel that that's going to happen probably this spring into summer.
And so is this for her salaries and leasing of office space or marketing materials? How would you break down the monies we've spent October, November, actual $75,000?
On that, I believe that is a standard agreement that we have with Marion. That is per month. And Terry, I know if you're coming up.
Thank you.
She may have the exact number on that.
The monthly charge?
For the international?
For Marion?
Yeah.
I believe it's the total contract is $300,000. I believe it's $25,000 a month.
Then we have budgeted $600,000. Maybe that's because we still had the London office budgeted.
Yep.
Right. Yes.
Thank you.
And then Terry, if you could, under the intergovernmental services, what encompasses that?
The intergovernmental services are charges from the county for services that we use. For instance, BTS services for technology, fleet management for maintenance of the vehicles, and also vehicle replacement, risk management for our liability insurance, and then workers' comp and things like that, all of those costs, as well as the general cost allocation, which includes attorney fees, human resources, just everything that the county provides us as far as services, purchasing services for all of our contracts, and finance also for every invoice, every transaction. It's all divided among all the county departments as far as how much they process.
Thank you. And that does not include the fee that the tax collector assesses us for collecting the bed tax each month. That's in addition to
No,
this line
yeah.
item. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's on the second page.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Terry. Any other questions on the financial statement? Again, I hope that you find the information useful in us going through this. And again, even though next month we will have a more concentrated effort on the sales and marketing side, we'll still have the financial statement so you can see what we're expending and what we're doing on behalf of the industry and the county. So the next part of finance then, capital funds program. And I know that there were some questions last month on that. So I know Jim Abernethy from OMB is here to talk about that. And we did provide a sheet, which is up on the screen, which is the latest information related to the capital program. Jim?
Good morning. Jim Abernethy with the Office of Management and Budget. What was distributed to you is what's also up on the screen. And we started doing this a few years ago with when we started the capital funding program. And we wanted to give projections and lay out our obligations, current obligations and potential future obligations for funding, as well as projected revenue that would be part of the 40% of the 60-40 breakdown of the revenue, with 60% going to operating and 40%, up to 40% going to the capital projects. As you can see, we started FY21 with about $1.4 million in beginning fund balance in the capital program. And that was the plan all along. We accumulated money for years after we finished our obligation with the City of St. Pete for Tropicana Field, and we added the 6%. So we were accumulating money to help pay for big projects in the county, and even small projects, without affecting the operating portion, the marketing and advertising for the CVB. And what we were able to do with that is we made two very large payments to Clearwater Marine Aquarium for to help with their expansion. That was $26 million. We ended up, we finished paying in FY20 for the City of Dunedin for the Blue Jays spring training facility, and that was just under $42 million in total. And we paid that off in just 3 years. So with the accumulated funds that we had maintained, we were able to get to complete our commitments for two very, very large projects in 3 years. We were also able to, we paid almost $2 million to the City of Clearwater for their Countryside Sports Complex. We just made the last of the two payments, I believe, in October. Ruth Eckerd Hall was also one of the big projects. And then Tampa Bay Watch. We also paid $6 million to the Craftsman Museum down in St. Pete, and we finished those payments in FY20 as well. For projections for FY21, we budgeted $20.8 million to be that would have been the 40% for the capital program. However, with COVID affecting our revenues as drastically as they did in FY20, when we did the budget for FY21, we had to use some of the money that would have gone into the capital reserves or to the capital program and use it to pay for marketing promotions within CVB without, we were able to not cut their marketing promotion budget. They made some other cuts in operating. They defunded some positions that had long been vacant. They'd cut down on travel expenses. They'd cut down on a lot of other expenses to tighten things up because they weren't going to be doing things as they normally do. So they knew that they could save some money. So what we had to do was use $4.4 million of what would have been capital revenue in FY21 in the budget. Now, as things improve, we would be able to, if the BCC would like to, we would be able to fill some of that back in when funds are available. But it's always the goal to make sure that the marketing and advertising portion of the CVB budget is fully funded as much as possible. So we will look to do that when we can. But it won't be the top priority for the budgeting. Like I said, we budgeted $20.8 million for FY21, and we have very little capital obligations at this point. We have the $4.3 million, which is the equivalent of half of 1% of revenue that goes each year to beach renourishment, to the capital. We transfer it to the county's capital program, and it is to be used for beach nourishment projects as they come up. And then we're finishing our, I believe it was a 15-year commitment to the city of Clearwater for Spectrum Field for the Phillies spring training, and we'll make the last of those payments in February, and then we will be done with that commitment. We have $350,000 budgeted for the Florida Holocaust Museum. I don't believe that the agreement has been signed yet on that, and so when that is actually going to be paid out, it may not be this year, maybe next year. If it doesn't pay this year, then we'll roll it over to next year, because this money is put into a bucket so we can use it from one year to the next. And then, as I said, the $1 million that we just finished, it was $950,000 that we just finished paying to the City of Clearwater for the last of the Countryside Sports Complex commitment. Going forward, the only project that we have that is a recurring project is the beach nourishment. And again, we budget that at the cash equivalent of 1/2 of one of the value of one of the tourist development tax percents. Next year, we think that'll be about $4.5 million. We have some other projects that we've received requests for that they are in various stages of negotiation or agreement, and one of them is the Phillies spring training project. The initial request was for $40 million. I know that they're still continuing to negotiate on that. I'm not involved in those negotiations, so I don't know where they are on those. But if you recall, a previous version of this would have had the same cash flow, but we started it early. We just moved everything back because obviously there were no payments in FY20 when we last year. We don't have an agreement that we would think that there was a $3.3 million payment in FY21, but that could happen after negotiations. So those cash flows are based on the request that was submitted by the City of Clearwater. And then the St. Pete Historical Society, we also have a $2.8 million request out there. And Tim or anyone else who would know more about those projects would have to answer those questions. I don't know where we are in those negotiations. And then the Salvador Dali Museum, there's a lot of negotiations going on those as well, and I believe their request was for $17.5 million. So across the bottom of this chart are what would be the yearly totals of the projections for when these would be needed for reimbursement potentially. Obviously, it is dependent on what is approved by the BCC. You know, the people who are requesting the money can request them in any year that they would like, but you know, it all depends on the agreement. So there could be an additional $6.1 million to be spent in FY21. FY22, we were looking at $31.6 million. We wouldn't have that amount available just based on these projections. If you look up at the bottom of the FY22 forecast row, projecting just under $29 million in available cash or available appropriations for that fiscal year. So there would have to be, you know, that has to be taken into consideration when agreements are made, and everything, you know, when negotiations are going on, they come to OMB and ask where we think we are, how much we can afford. So we are part of the internal discussions on those. Any questions on the specifics of this?
Yes, Mayor Brzezinski.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and it's probably not for you, but since we're talking about it in the capital budget, Frank, are you able to give us any update as to where we are in the Phillies process?
We have hired an outside firm that specializes in studying minor league deals and major league spring training facilities all over the country. So what they have been studying is all of the deals with MLB around not only Florida but also Arizona, how the deals are structured, the different contributing organizations, be it counties, tourist development councils, the cities that the team resides in, and the team itself. So I just had a meeting yesterday. We are going to retain this company for another 6 months. It's costing us about $25,000 a month.
We did the same thing, by the way, Denny.
So they are in contact with the city and also with the Phillies. We're not completely set yet to come back with any specific request, but I think it has been a much improved process to have a company that is familiar with a lot of the deals.
Yeah.
And it will help us negotiate with the Phillies to get the best contract possible. It obviously is critically important to us to keep the Phillies here.
Sure.
We've made a significant investment. Spectrum, which is going to be changing names shortly. Spectrum is bowed out of the deal, and we have a new sponsor that will be revealed shortly. But we need to keep that facility, obviously, in Pinellas County. But we're trying to get the best deal for the county, for Clearwater, and also have a very high-quality location for the Phillies, and we only want a 20-year contract. So,
Okay, thank you.
more to come soon.
Thank you. And then my other question was to Rick, where are we with the raise? Because we know we have that one, that cent put aside and whatever, I'm just curious.
Before we get into that, we don't have a percent set aside for the raise.
Okay, we put it all back in the,
It is part of the capital funding program.
Gotcha.
We did not set aside any money, any particular money for any particular project that we don't have a commitment for. So I don't want,
well, at one time we did.
well, it was,
In theory, it
It's in
was
theory.
cordoned off.
yeah, we were accumulating money which was used for the Blue Jays project, for the Clearwater Marine Aquarium, but getting those items out of the way frees up money later.
Sure.
So I don't want it to be
Okay.
misunderstood that there is an additional cent out there that is not on here.
Gotcha.
What is on here is all the money that we have.
Yeah, as I understood, it was always prospective down the road.
Correct.
It was identified that those funds would be available, but in the short term, there were these other projects that were going to use those funds.
Gotcha.
So that discussions continue.
Okay.
So I would say let's, those funds will absolutely be needed if we're able to reach an agreement. I think it is something that Hillsborough County does not have available to them that we do potentially that could make a difference.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Yes. Oh, sorry. Russ had his hand up first.
From time to time, we've had the people come in from Beach Nourishment. And I know we set aside half a penny, and maybe we could have some time in 2021 where they come in and give a presentation, where's the next project and how much is there, and the federal government's position right now as we go forward. So there's no rush, but I think that probably should be addressed sometime in 21,
Well,
just
we've
for
been
information.
We've been hoping to have some influence on the Army Corps of Engineers, of course, about these beach easements. So far, we don't have any information about it, other than that if you didn't get them by the end of the year, you're sunk. We did talk to the Assistant Secretary of the Army for these projects last week, and he was sort of encouraging. Congressman Christ and Bilirakis are working on them diligently, so we're hoping that they'll waive some of those requirements that they just put in place, so we can go on. I think the next project is Sand Key and South Indian Rocks. So keep your fingers crossed, or talk to whoever you know about trying to get some relief here.
Madam Chair, what are some of those new requirements?
Just that we have an easement for every single property that's going to have, it's insanity. And of course, as time goes on, the resistance grows. I think the mistrust of government in general, has infected that particular problem. And we have people actually calling up now and saying, I gave you my easement, but I want it back. So we have a problem. And there's no reason for them to be asking for these easements where they're asking for them anyway. So hopefully they'll see the reason in that and come back and say, oh, you don't really need those. So we're trying to negotiate with them. But as soon as we have some answers on that, we'll have somebody come and explain all that. Yes, Julie.
That just brought a question to me. How does a beach area go about applying for the funding? What's that process look like?
It's the county that applies for the funding.
On behalf of?
Right.
So,
and there's kind of a regular schedule that,
Gotcha.
I couldn't tell you what it is right now, but
No, that's okay.
I know the next one is.
But you
Sand Key.
mentioned an easement, and I was just going to say Dunedin Causeway could really use some renourishment, and I've been trying to figure out how to get them into the queue of consideration in the next 10 years or whatever.
Probably the best thing to do is talk to Kelly Levy and
Gotcha. Thank
find
you.
out what the process is. Shoni, I'm sorry. Yes.
That's fine. I think this is just a little bit misleading in that if we in fact spend the money in FY22, in FY23, the opening balance is a negative 2.8 million.
Correct. If we move any of those items from the bottom up to the top, that
Correct.
reduces that 28.8 million.
And then in FY24, there's about $1 million and change that would be left again if these projects move forward. So what I'm seeing here is that it's really, and this is all based upon whether your numbers are accurate or not. Hopefully things come roaring back and these balances are much larger. But it looks like if your forecast is correct, and if those items that are below the line move up, we're in FY24 before we really have a substantial amount of money to move forward on another project. Is that a fair assumption?
Yeah, that would be fair. If they moved up in the same cash flow way that we have them on here.
Right.
We couldn't even do them the way that they're on here, because if we spend the 6.1 million this year, then we would only have, 22.7 million
Right.
available for FY '22, and with a potential $31.6 million ask. So we can't do, with the current projections, we can't do what the potential asks are in the way that they're laid out on here without, expending, it would be operating dollars at that point. So this is just showing the potential of what is out there and what is available, or what we're projecting to be available to fund those projects. So if we move anything up, that ending fund balance line will change accordingly.
And potentially change dramatically.
Correct. If we add the Salvador Dali in a particular year, that's $18 million that we would be taking out of one particular year. Or if the revenues fall short, then that's even less available money. This is assuming that we collect about $52 million in TDT revenue this fiscal year. If we go lower than that, then we would have less money available for the capital projects. If we collect more, then we would have more in the future.
And I think that's important that we as the TDC clearly understand that, we sat really from 2013 to 2019, record year after record year after record year, and the hoteliers in the room said, we're a cyclical industry, and all it takes is a downturn. Mm-hmm. And so I'm glad this is on the record. This is great. Want to see the Phillies move forward, want to see the Dali move forward, but we are starting to see the pinch of this substantial drop-off in bed tax. So thank you, Jim.
So, and just to reinforce that, the 60% is untouchable, pretty much. The 40% is what fluctuates. So if we have an issue, it comes out of the 40% to balance the budget, which is why I think some of these negotiations are taking longer. I know that they've talked to the Dali about maybe stretching those payments out a little bit, because that 14 million, what is it? 17 and a half in 1 year. We're trying to see if maybe they don't need all that in 1 year. Also, the negotiations with the Phillies may come in somewhat less than $40 million, so we'll see. So, but certainly they know what the parameters are of what's available and what we're hoping to be available, so as they're negotiating. Yes, I'm sorry.
This may be a question for Michael. Are we restricted in beach nourishment to that 0.5%? Or if there was a project that we identified that was something that we really needed to do for the county, without regard to federal matches, could we expand our beach nourishment for a specific project?
Excuse me, statutorily, you're not restricted. It would probably require a budget amendment by the BCC, but the dollars, so long as they're available, can be used.
Okay.
So we're not restricted to the
A lot of you may have
0.5%.
heard that, in Johns Pass, there's a serious problem going on, and it affects me somewhat personally, I'll admit, but I can maintain mine because I'm far enough out. But the rest of the marina space in Johns Pass is filling in, and there's a lot of businesses that operate there that are definitely tourism-based. It's one of the biggest tourism attractions we have in the county. And if something's not done fairly soon, or get ahead of the curve here on this thing, it's going to be a real big problem. And it can be mitigated fairly easily if it's done in the near term. But to get in line with the beach nourishment programs and wait its turn, it may be too late. So something I'm going to look into a little bit and I'll report back.
And I'm not sure, is a dredging project like that even eligible? That's not the same as beach renourishment.
It's a little different, Commissioner. There was some changes to the statute. We'd have to look at that to see if it qualified.
We'd have to change our plan.
It might qualify, but we'd have to amend our plan, correct, because I believe that was not added.
Right.
Possibly it could be incorporated into a beach nourishment, taking all it's saying and put it somewhere it's needed.
Oh, well. Easier said than done. Yes, I'm sorry.
One of the things that we looked at on the City of St. Pete Beach is that our beach renourishment, the attrition into the sand, into the Grand Canal, that was affecting Camp Baywatch and a lot of that. And when we talked to the Army Corps of Engineers, they were not willing to dredge that area, you know, for the next dredging project, for the next beach renourishment for St. Pete Beach, because they like to pull sand that's similar to it, even though we thought that that sand was the same. So I don't know if we're going to run into the same thing if we just pulled the sand for the next beach renourishment project from, you know, the Johns Pass area, you know, to do that. They haven't been open to doing that in the past, so just food for thought.
Well, I mean, part of the problem is that when they dredged the pass, when they built the bridge and dredged the pass, they put the sand in the wrong place.
Yeah,
They should have used it for beach renourishment. They didn't.
And they also left some debris on the
Right.
northeast side of the bridge underwater that started the problem. It started catching the sand, and now it's created somewhat of a beachhead.
Right.
It's growing, and that sand is coming from the overflow off the jetty.
Right.
Jetty was built out there. It caught just like on Sand Key. A jetty was built and it did its job. It kept the sand out of the pass until it filled up. And now we're seeing a similar problem in Clearwater because the currents are pushing it past the jetty, and you know it's reached its limit. So
And
there's
unfortunately, that's all private.
For a long-term fix, it did have to be T-groins put in there to hold everything in place. And I haven't been actively involved in the thing, but I'll get a little more involved in it, find out and get more details on it. But it's something that would have a major impact on tourism, I think, if that marina were closed down.
Right.
It's also a safety hazard, and the currents are really bad anyway. So, enough said.
Well, that's private property there, and I don't think it's eligible. The Grand Canal is being handled in a different way. I think the county is going to do well, you don't know.
Yeah, that
County's going to do the dredging, but it's going to be an assessment on the property owners there in Tierra Verde. Yeah. So, anyway, we have sand issues everywhere. Too little and too much. Where were we?
Yeah. Are there any other questions for Jim? I thought you did a great job in laying everything out, and hopefully you guys all have a better understanding what's happening with the capital program. So Jim, thank you for going through all of this.
I don't know if we need to have somebody come and talk about Johns Pass, or if that's just.
You could, Commissioner, as a matter of fact, if I think Russ's suggestion is appropriate. I know that I speak to the lawyers in our office that deal with the beach nourishment issues, and I encourage them, for that staff, to keep you guys advised if the federal law starts changing or if federal funding looks like it's going to be cut, because that might inform the conversations you're having as far as recommendations to the BCC for allocations. And keep in mind that you used to have in your plan a 0.5% dedicated by the plan. Now it's done by budget. You could increase that amount by budget. You could also put it back in the plan and increase the amount. So you've got options as to the beach nourishment issue if and when those situations arise.
Okay. As soon as we know something.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, that would be all for the finance update.
Okay. Then I guess we're into department updates.
And have Leroy come up.
Good morning. Happy holidays. Somehow Christmas is next week.
Yeah.
They are going to pull up presentation, going to provide a couple updates on several digital marketing programs that are ongoing and or just wrapped, as well as touch on some of our latest content projects and some of our communications pieces. So first, I teased this last month, but wanted to touch on our Expedia recovery program campaign. So Expedia, and kudos to them, you know, like everybody attached to tourism during this year, they've taken it on the chin too. However, they've created a very robust and aggressive recovery program for destinations and hoteliers to participate in. We bought into the program at the $100,000 campaign level. They had multiple levels. And this program launched on October 1st. And it actually includes, for our first time, advertising on VRBO as well. And VRBO, a decision by us because of how we've seen the data trending for vacation rentals. And as you see the kind of the last bullet to skip ahead there, those placements are actually outperforming anything on Expedia.com, their main page. So worthwhile to add them to the mix. But you can see some of the performance here through the first month. Obviously, with Expedia, one of the beauties, they are the juggernaut in the space. Partnering with them is going to guarantee influencing booking of rooms into this destination. And we get great data, great reporting from Expedia on how this campaign performs, how many bookings resulted in those who were actually served an ad. And you can see already just in the first month, more than $115,000 in bookings from those who were served an ad. Also, additional components as part of the program that just launched some social media promotion, so paid posts on Expedia's social media profiles. And a really cool component of this program, and again, kudos to Expedia on this, they are funding entirely this piece of the program. So for just about a month, starting January 4th, is a 20% coupon program. So Expedia is giving those who book 20% off. You can use these coupons, and they're funding the discount entirely themselves. So the hoteliers aren't taking the hit. We don't have to fund it, and that's, again, part of the recovery program structure that Expedia rolled out. And then we'll also be featured in one of their Destination of the Week emails in early January. These are just some screenshots of what those social posts look like that just went live last week on their channels. Another huge player, obviously, in the OTA space and travel review space, TripAdvisor. We just had a campaign conclude with them. This campaign was much longer than we anticipated. We paused it for 3 plus months because of the shutdown and the situation, but we did reboot it. It launched earlier this year. And this focused primarily around creating unique content on TripAdvisor to put forward while people are browsing potential places to visit. And I think what was really cool here, so you can see some of the metrics and the impressions and the hours, but our best performing piece of content was dubbed Get Off the Beaten Path. And given our situation this year, that's probably not too terribly surprising. People want to avoid other people, frankly. And what's cool is what was featured in that. Yes, we do promote the beaches a lot, and that's our main calling card. But there are a lot of other elements that we build and create and promote through our marketing, and this is one of them. And in fact, this was Get Off the Beaten Path, promoting the Duncan McClellan space, Imagine Museum, our smaller communities like Gulfport, Dunedin, and even Ozona. So again, wanted to highlight that it outperformed better than any of the beach content we put forward. We did have other content that touched on those, but that was what people spent the most time with, which again is very important to us, dispersing our visitors and making sure they visit our many unique communities throughout the destination. Again, one of the beauties of partnering with the likes of a TripAdvisor, you get really robust data. So we can understand, okay, we spent $125,000 on this program, and we drove more than $670,000 in direct economic impact spend that happened in this county as a result of that. So a 4-to-1 return on ad spend with this content program. A lot less focused on bookings, which the Expedia program is very booking heavy. One tool in the toolbox, this one more content driven, but still impacting and inspiring visitation in a different way. I touched on this a couple months ago, and I think it's important to kind of go back to. We have a number of tools that we measure return on, especially in the digital space, and one of them is a tool offered by Adara. It's called Adara Impact. We are able to pixel track put a code on all of our digital marketing that goes out there, and it tracks who is actually booking hotels and airlines into the destination through third-party data. So since June 1st, all of the digital marketing that we've put out into the ecosystem, Adara Impact has tracked more than $26 million in hotel revenue generated by those marketing efforts. They do not see every booking. They see about half. So that's just a thumbnail, but it's important to understand where we're placing media, how it's performing with direct bookings, and how it's not. We will use this data to build a plan and say, you know what, this vendor, you drove great impressions, but it didn't lead to bookings. Thanks, but no thanks. We're going to move on, as we build our next plan. Impressions are great, but they're not everything. And if they don't lead to bookings in the digital space, we will look for another provider who can drive bookings. Some other data that Adara is able to share with us, you can see days from search to book and the book to arrivals, just some facts that I thought were interesting. And of all of the age segments on the age range, and again, possibly not terribly surprising, but maybe reaffirming our situation since June 1st, that 35 to 54-year-old bracket converting at a higher rate. So making bookings, those who are exposed, and then making bookings at a higher rate than any other age bracket that they track. And then one of the great pieces too is origin markets. Now, Adara Impact, that's not their number one focus. We use Arrivalist that really focuses on geography, but we can see some of that through Adara as well. And you can see where, I just put Florida because Florida is kind of takes the cake with a lot of the top 10, but some additional out-of-state markets that you see pop through this data. So again, why is this important? Because as we spend dollars marketing, even in this climate, we want to understand exactly how many bookings are being made and how much revenue is being driven back to our hotels. Wanted to touch on some of our, so that kind of concluding the digital marketing update, but touching on some of the content creation and content marketing items. I'm going to share 3 videos in just a second, but I want to touch on YouTube. We talk about Facebook a lot. We talk about other social media channels a lot. YouTube is often forgotten, in my opinion, in the content marketing space. We have one of the best YouTube presence in the DMO space, in the country, in my opinion. Since June 1, again, kind of running those data, that analytics back since June 1, 3.4 million views on our channel. So that's driving, people are actually watching, and a view for YouTube is at least 7 seconds of watching. That metric does vary based on channel. So on Facebook will count a view if somebody watches just 3 seconds of content. It's a pretty low bar in my opinion. What I love about YouTube is that bar is a bit higher. So somebody's watched at least 7 seconds of the content. Not just the views, but then the length of time they've spent with the content. So 50,000 plus hours consumed of our video content since June. That totals more than 6 years in just that period of time. And then again, wanted to emphasize what some of these top performers are. So I'm going to share some of the newest video items, but you can see what those top performers are. They're not going to be maybe what a lot of people would think. We created a 360 video of going down a slide at Splash Harbor Water Park, which if you're not familiar, it's a great, modest, but a great experience, easy parking down near the Holiday Inn Harborside on the Intercoastal. And that video it performs really well, just ongoing. People love the 360 nature of it. It gets caught into algorithms on YouTube, and people consume it constantly. Rise to Shine is up there. St. Pete Pier, Caladesi Island, and our Dunedin community video. So again, very geographically diverse and diverse from a content perspective throughout the destination. They're going to pull up these 3 videos. The first one we're going to share is a new Oldsmar community video. So every several years, we need to obviously go back into a community and update what those videos are like. And we're going through that process right now with updating our community videos. And this is the latest and greatest for Oldsmar. We're also going to share Okay, it looks like we got it here. The first tab, if you will. This is the third one. There we go. So again, these videos are meant to...
Wow. What do they say here? It's time to zip on. Welcome to Oldsmar.
Inspire someone to discover a community that they may not know. This is actually, if you're a big Bucks fan, you might recognize this talent we're using in this video. Former Buck Cameron Lynch.
The water's nice, the weather's great. Great time to zip line, huh?
So depending on the style video, we'll use a combination of talent plus text overview. This type of video will generate 20,000 views a month and drive, a lot of interest for a community that many people may not know a lot about.
I worked up quite an appetite this morning. I had to bring you all to my favorite spot out here in Oldsmar, Wooden Ladle. They have the best ramen, the best pho, but I want to show you some of my favorite meals here. The miso spicy, okay? Orders in, all we have to do is pay. Let's go take a seat, wait for our food.
We'll give a shout out to Deb Pauley at Oldsmar. Work closely with the city of Oldsmar for
Cam, how are you? Man, Brian, doing well. It's great
for
to
the
see you.
storyline.
I haven't tried this yet, so can you please break this down for me?
Yeah, that's our tuna poke chips. It's essentially a blend of avocado, all on top of almost like a nacho-style chip.
A lot of people, when they think of Oldsmar, they think of it's a bit old school with the Oldsmobile, the RE Olds. Oldsmar is working on rebranding that and making sure people know it does have hip, cool restaurants like the place we just featured.
Than any other city in the state.
And an incredibly outdoor destination with as many parks as it has.
This is my favorite park and also my favorite beach. It might be small, but on days like today, you get it all to yourself. Natural shade. How many beaches do you know have natural shade? Woo. The Oldsmar Trail connects 9 city parks. This is RE Olds Park, where we bring our families and all the locals hang out.
One of the challenges, I will say, creating these types of videos during this time, and this was filmed.
The Big Bamboo.
The Big Bamboo. I hope you enjoy.
Yes, thank you so much.
This was filmed during COVID. Is the challenge to make it more evergreen while COVID is a serious concern right now. Hopefully, in 6-8 months when people are being inspired to travel,
what a day in Oldsmar, huh?
they're not seeing masks in every video, right? So while it is a fixture of our experience right now, we're hopeful that this video can be used, like I said, for several years to promote a little getaway to Oldsmar. 2 others real quick, if you would indulge. Again, different styles of videos. This particular video highlights a new accommodation offering in the destination. Oftentimes, new accommodations give us an angle to promote new offerings, promote these across social media. This is a new property down in Madeira Beach. Obviously, again, not your traditional hotel experience, but especially right now, this is what travelers are after. And to be able to highlight what's new in the destination. This one, again, different style. We have talent, but it's not talking, it's not narrating, it's just giving you the pretty pictures and some of the fast facts, some of the info about what you can expect in this experience. The majority, and you guys all know this, on your phones, consuming content on Facebook or whatever platform, the majority of these videos are watched without sound on Facebook and the like. YouTube is a little different. You can experience, a lot of people, more people do watch videos with sound on YouTube than not. And the last one is arts focused, and again, along that what's new line, an opportunity to create a video around Van Gogh Alive. If you haven't had the opportunity to get to the Dali to see this exhibit, you really need to. It's stunning. It's the first location in the U.S. to host this particular exhibit. So So again, what we do is we create this video and then we take it and we put money behind it and we market this with paid marketing efforts, YouTube, Facebook, paid search across the website, and of course we share it with the partners as well, the communities and or anybody who's featured to use it on their own channels. You can see masks in this one. This is an exhibit that runs through April, so a little bit more. You don't have to shoot around something like that. It's not as evergreen. It's very in the moment and timely, and somebody who's going to go and experience this, they're going to need to be wearing a mask. So thank you for that. Again, just to give you a little sneak peek into some of our other efforts beyond just buying advertising and inspiring people to visit, but actually creating content to push on these platforms as well. A couple quick slides before I hand it over. On the communication side, wanted to touch this piece of media coverage we generated last week, I believe it was, or the week before. Since COVID, it has been a challenge. You know, normally we host journalists from around the world regularly. Hundreds of journalists a year, and journalists can equal video, audio, website, newspaper, you name it. Obviously all vetted and all, using our PR firms from Germany and the UK and New York City to execute these, but we have been dipping our toes back in the water. It can be a challenge, obviously, right, during COVID. You're not real sure exactly where the coverage is going to go. You know, ultimately, we bring journalists here to experience the destination, and they have total control over what they write. And so during COVID, that can be challenging. You want to make sure that somebody experiences the destination in its truest form. We did decide to host a writer from Florida. That's kind of what we've done here early to dip our toes back in the water. If a journalist is based in Florida, they know what to expect from the Florida experience right now as it relates to COVID. Somebody based down in Miami, and it resulted in incredible coverage for an outlet owned and operated by the Miami Herald called Indulge. And I can't write a better headline than that, frankly, if we wanted to. So Miami can't have all the art fun. Here's why a sophisticated artscape to St. Pete is a must in 2021. So again, trying to work with journalists and media to think about what the situation, what travel looks like moving forward, and inspiring people to put our destination on the bucket list for their travels. She, in fact, writes one of the lines in here is, "I spent a busy several days in St. Pete Clearwater and never touched the sand." So again, what our efforts? Yes, we do promote the beaches a lot. We use a lot of these efforts to promote other aspects of the destination, obviously arts, and of course the new St. Pete Pier were big pieces of this. So wanted to share that, very exciting. Also, just wanted to touch on our webinar efforts for this year. I know Mr. Kimball mentioned kind of what we've been up to from a webinar standpoint at the last meeting. So wanted to touch on this. Shockingly, and of course by now we're all zoomed out, but shockingly, prior to March, we had, as an organization, had never held a virtual industry webinar or meeting. I'm kind of looking back on that, stunned by it, because we can all do them in our sleep now. But since then, we've held 11, and wide-ranging topics. Many of the departments, shout out to Suzanne and Tim, and many of the departments of Rose, who have participated and organized these throughout the year. As you can see, average attendance and average registrations, I would say, based on participation at other industry events, to have a regular, average attendance of 145 is pretty incredible, in my opinion, to get that industry involved. And so something we're looking at and wanted to tease a little bit coming up in 2021 is not just because of COVID, because of the circumstance, but beginning a regularly scheduled industry partner webinar series that's educational but also actionable, bringing forward some of the experts we work with both at Miles and BVK, but also companies like Sojourn, who operates a lot of our co-op and one of our big digital marketing providers, and then many of our research providers as well. So stay tuned for that. Excited to get that scheduled at a specific time and place so industry knows when to expect it, when it's going to happen, and the topics will rotate. And all ears, certainly if any of you have topics or anything that your staff can benefit from hearing, not just from us, again, but from a lot of the providers and vendors we work with. Any questions on anything I covered? All right. Oh.
Yes, go ahead.
Madam Chair, if I may. Leroy, great presentation as always. One of the slides you had up there really underscored the last-minute booking patterns that are being demonstrated. Inside of 28 days from search to arrival,
yep.
Have we altered our marketing message or our advertising plans to focus in on that very short-term nature of the booking?
So the beauty of much of you're right, and that can be the challenge, right? Is being in front of that customer as last minute as possible, right. To capture them. The beauty of many of our low funnel marketing tactic providers that we work with, Sojourn and Epsilon, formerly Conversant, is that they're using first party data and third party data to know when you're searching. So using your search behavior or that person who is last minute searching to see that behavior. They're searching last minute for a Florida beach vacation and serving our advertising in front of them. So the messaging, not as much as the targeting and the tactic used to get that messaging in front of them of, you need to consider us in this last minute booking. Sure. I think the other key to capitalizing on that last minute nature is familiarity. Oftentimes you're going to go back to something when you're making a purchase so last minute, especially a trip which can be, expensive, not just a loaf of bread, is a lot of that retargeting, again, is going after those who in the last 2 years, they've swiped a credit card in Pinellas County. We know who that past visitor is. And so making sure that we're using that targeting, contextual targeting as well, behavioral targeting, to get that message in front of them at the right time.
Yeah. And as a follow-up, I was surprised to see Indianapolis and Cincinnati as source cities. Are we doing any specific geomarketing to those cities as they pop up in this data?
For sure. So we've used this data along with a number of others to build that wintertime marketing campaign. And I know Katie hit on it last month, and we have, yes, our geographic marketing set is significant. We always market the Midwest, but it's significant. We have invested more into these markets this year than ever before because of this data. So yes, in particular, Cincinnati and Indianapolis are going to know who we are in a big, big way. Our campaign has launched, and it will continue to roll through March. So on the digital side, we're able to encompass, dozens of these Midwestern and Southeastern markets. On the traditional side, we have large presence in both Cincy and Indy.
Great.
Thank you. Sorry. Is that mostly because of Allegiant flying there?
It's a very great point, Commissioner. A lot of the data that we see, there's no doubt that the visitation data corresponds with the markets Allegiant serving. And we're fortunate to have Allegiant servicing this destination because more than ever, those markets are performing, and they're a big contributor to that.
Mayor Hibbert?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Leroy, great presentation. The YouTube videos, who are producing those?
So sorry.
And do you know the cost roughly of this?
Obviously, a video like the old with talent is a bit more. We have different scopes for different video projects. So I could tell you the community's video scope encompasses 6 different communities at a total cost, I want to say about $30,000. I think off the top of my head, those community videos are about $5,000. They include full shoot days, the talent included in those, and then obviously the finished product, not just for YouTube, but an Instagram cut and a Facebook cut. All of these platforms have different specs to them, so you have to edit them to their particular. The accommodations or what's new videos that, full transparency, the talent you saw, the family you saw in that accommodations video is actually the videographer's family. I'm pretty cheap when it comes to talent. I often will tell them find somebody to use. Make sure they sign a waiver, and they're okay with that. But so that video, I off the top of my head, maybe $3,000. Yeah.
Great, thank you.
And because we do produce, we produce a lot of video. I strongly believe in the power of video. It's very efficient. We have to be efficient, and with the contract with Miles in place, we're able to use them for the majority of it.
Commissioner Fletcher.
Chair, you started the conversation that I was going to ask as far as when we discuss the top markets. I think of between Tampa and St. Pete Clearwater, we have a lot of airlines that provide cheap direct flights. And so at what point do we start working with airlines in order to expand the market? When I'm looking at St. Louis, Atlanta, it's all these places where you can fly directly into the area. So I know that Hawaiian Air just started a direct flight from Orlando recently. And so I was just kind of wondering at what point do we try to expand our market by working with the airlines that would provide those cheap direct flights into our area?
Yeah, it's a great question. So we work very closely with both our airports, St. Pete Clearwater International Airport and Tampa International, to help with air service development. I will say traditionally, pre-COVID, that work and that money is generally spent developing international flights, because those are harder to come by, and we know that international visitor stays longer and spends more. During this COVID environment, we have had a number of conversations with Tampa International and the likes of United, for instance, which has moved away from its traditional model and the hub and spoke model, and put in place more nonstops from the likes of Minneapolis, for instance, into Tampa. Oftentimes, those airlines, at least what I would say over the last 3 and 6 months we've experienced, they want some general support and help marketing the flight on our channels. But to my knowledge, we haven't had any requests for dollar support in large way. They just want help getting the word out on those flights, which we do provide support on social media and work closely with Tampa International and or PIE to help with that. Additionally, not just on the marketing side, but on the sales side, obviously Rose and her team working respective markets, whether that's with AAA offices or travel agents in particular regions, to make sure that they are aware of said new nonstop flights. So we're in close contact. We have a monthly call with Tampa International and frequent daily, sometimes communication with PIE on what we can do to help add those flights. I will tell you that obviously Florida in general and our destination, a lot of airlines have looked at us and have added routes because of the type of product we offer, which is what people are after right now, and people are booking in versus other types of experiences. So, does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
Tony?
Good questions about, this came up in one of my sales meetings recently about, have we seen a cut in capacity from the airlines, and I'm talking about the major carriers now, into Tampa? And I think it would be timely going into the winter season because we are so reliant on that Midwest and Northeast, and not all of them are going to jump in a car and drive. So it might be very timely to have the airports come in and do a presentation about what are the airlines saying about the winter season, how many flights have been routes have been canceled, what's their capacity. That's so critical to what's going to happen from January through April. So can you give us any updates? Have you heard anything?
Yeah. So I believe the last number, it was a TPA call last week that we were on, that all but 4, I believe it was all but 4 of their nonstop cities serviced are back online. Now the question is frequency. and load. And that's the big challenge. So even though there may be, we'll say Indianapolis, even though that never went away, a nonstop to Indianapolis comes back online, is it once a week or daily? And that's the big gap still. But I will tell you that, again, we've built our partnership with TPA in ways we never have, and particularly around the data. We are providing them a ton of data to help them make the case. They meet with a lot of these airlines regularly, and they're using our STR performance, our bed tax performance, our vacation rental performance to meet with Southwest and say, look, and then matching it up with the likes of an Orlando and a Miami and a Fort Lauderdale, which are TPA's competitors, and saying, look, we're over-indexing against all 4 of these destinations right now, which is the case. You should shift some of this frequency back to us. Don't go back into Orlando, which candidly, a lot of the airport people say, they can't get enough of Orlando. But in this instance, it's like, well, change that focus. And so they have been doing a lot of work. Like I said, I believe the last count was 4 cities who aren't back online, but I couldn't agree more. I mean, certainly you all hearing directly from them. And PIE, again, that's just a question of frequency. I believe all of those cities are still being serviced. In fact, they've added a couple new ones just recently, announcing, I believe Fargo was a new addition to the PIE route map, a seasonal service, I believe, that starts this winter. But again, the question becomes frequency based on demand. Just real quick, some other information that I've been reading, from PIE that they've shared with us is it's going to be a rough couple months for the airlines. The progress that we saw, is particularly the airline industry saw leading into Thanksgiving. If you recall, Thanksgiving weekend was the highest, high point for travel for airlines throughout the pandemic. The rest of December and January look bleak. Despite the vaccine news, cancellations have ramped back up on the airline side. And it's anybody's guess as to exactly why, but perhaps people are saying, let me just wait 4 or 5 more months. I'll get a vaccine and But the airlines are not necessarily looking forward to the next month, 2 months.
Okay. Any other questions for Leroy?
Nope.
Okay. Oh, I'm sorry.
Not really a question, just wanted to follow up and disclosure on the video. Thank you, because that is a new product that we're handling in terms of the Madeira Bay Resort. And it was interesting. I had them send me over some statistics, and so we've had the post engagement on that particular website, because it links through VSPC's up like 109%. And our reach in terms of the number of people that we're able to contact through was up almost 250%.
Awesome.
So it has generated some bookings, but the point is that it's showing the types of products that we have that goes through VSPC, and just another option for the travelers, and how important it is. I'm chuckling, Frank, with your question about cost and so forth, and it was the video people and their family, and we've had the one comment about, we just wish the kids hadn't been jumping on the bed with their shoes on, but it's in terms of promotion. But no, it's been effective, and it was great that the team pulled together and did that. But thank you.
And great to hear that it's driving bookings. That's the goal. Thank you.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
We're going to hear from Katie.
Good morning. I just want to give a quick update on our co-op advertising sales, as well as our Gulf to Bay magazine sales. So our co-op advertising, last week we had our annual submission day where partners can log on to our co-op website and select the programs that they would interested in for the year. We had 63 opportunities across 6 programs. So we had our Sojourn 1-to-1-to-1 matching program, our VSPC consumer email. We have 3 types of opportunities with that, a spot in our Visit Florida Vacation Guide 2-page spread that we do each year. And then also new this year, we had an opportunity for a matching program with our Facebook channel. And so we had 15 partners sign up during co-op submission day last week, which is about normal, maybe a little bit less, but it's about a normal amount. Currently we have 16 opportunities that remain, mostly with our dedicated email, which is where we send out an email once per month, and you are the only advertiser featured in that to our consumer database of over 300,000. And so we have the following months still available: March, May, June, August, September, and December. And then we still have some Facebook advertising opportunities, and that's a monthly opportunity for June to December, the second half of 2021. So we had a great response. Notifications went out to partners yesterday with the programs that they secured, and we'll get those back, and we'll launch January 1st. And then, as open to adding additional opportunities throughout the year as more opportunities become available and we see a need to increase programs. And then with our Gulf to Bay Destination Magazine, just a quick update on ad sales. I know that was a question last month. So they partner with the Tampa Bay Times on this magazine because they help us with all the editorial, the photography, the publishing, and the ad sales. And so I got an update from my contact there on Monday. And for 2021, as of Monday, we currently have 34 advertisers confirmed with 21 and a half pages of advertising with sales of almost 188,000. How that compares to how we ended with our 2020 publication, we had 50 advertisers with 33 and a half pages of advertising and sales of a little over 300,000. So we're still contacting partners. We have extended the sales deadline to Friday. We have had 2 new advertisers for 2021, and we have had a couple advertisers upgrade their space in the magazine from like a half page to a full page. We still have partners that did decline. Mostly they're like the attraction partners is that we've been seeing, and some of the attractions have held off. We did want to point out that this is for in-market in May. And then it would be through winter of 2022. So we're dropping a little bit later, but it'll still have a long shelf life in through winter of 2022. And we're doing 500,000 distribution in newspaper inserts throughout the summer into the fall and winter, including our standard brochure distribution, our direct mail, and then, fingers crossed, into some of those shows that our sales teams attend. We did roll back the rates as well this year, slightly from what they were a couple years before. But our rates are very comparable to some other, destination publications. I know Visit Florida, their publication, they maintain the same print quantity and their price remained the same, as well as Visit Tampa Bay. I know they did not change their rate at all this year as well. So yeah, like I said, we are still contacting partners to see if we can get that up. We have about 80 pages of editorial. Typically, we like to look at like a 60-40 split from 60% editorial and 40% ad sales. This year, right now we currently stand at 80% editorial, 20% ad sales. And based on the information that we receive, we may end up cutting a few pages from the magazine from 112 pages maybe down to 104, depending on if we have any final ad sales this week. And then as far as editorial, we are working closely. We've been having weekly meetings with the Tampa Bay Times team on the editorial. So really enhancing our outdoors content this year, beaches, communities, really focusing on some of our new attractions, the pier and the Clearwater Marine Aquarium expansion. So what's great about the magazine is every year there's always something new to promote because our destination is so, there's always something new going on, new restaurants. So that's exciting. There'll be some great new content. And we are looking at expanding like a places to stay page to show kind of the different options, like we mentioned with the video. So we have, from a vacation rental to a hotel, and really kind of showcasing that a little bit more in the magazine than we have in the past.
All right. Questions of Katie? Okay, thanks.
I also wanted to say we are also, our digital version of the magazine, we are switching vendors this year with that. And so I look forward to some of the enhanced capabilities that we'll be able to do in the digital e-magazine version. And that includes like from linking, hyperlinking, to adding video content, and to getting a little bit more robust metrics on, what page did someone stay on the longest when they're flipping through the magazine. And so look forward to the information that we'll get from that.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you, Katie. And Mike, to go back to one of your questions when you mentioned Indy. So on Monday, I was having a conversation with a good friend of mine, a peer up in Indianapolis, who basically said, "All right, I'm coming to visit." I'm like, okay, great. What prompted that? Other than it's probably, the wintertime. She's like, "I keep seeing your ads up here." And she's new to Indianapolis. So that going back to the team, working with BVK and Miles and our internal team of getting those messages out. So those are those things you love hearing. So I wanted to pass that along. Under my report, the first thing I was going to go over was strategic planning process. You have in front of you a document that's a 2-page document that says strategic planning process. I want to run through that a little bit because this is a project that's going to be near and dear to my heart over the next 9 months. And essentially I think this is a time that we as an industry need to be looking forward and say, where should we be going? Where do we need to be going between now and the next 5 years? We are going to be working with HCP, who is an agency out of Tampa, and Robert Allen, who is their vice president, is here in attendance. So if there are specific questions on what they're looking at doing, he can answer that. HCP, which is interesting, when we started looking at a firm to go with, they've already had an agreement with Pinellas County to do some work. In fact, work with economic development for the county. So there's some synergy already that's there, which I think is excellent. And I've also worked with them previously when I was on the other side of the bay on a couple of things. So I'm pretty familiar with the organization. But essentially, in the conversations with them, is in this plan, and again, this is to really kind of talk about this process going forward, because it's going to take about 9 months. This isn't something that's done lickety-split. It's very thoughtful. It's very intentional of what we're going to be doing. And basically, how I look at it, and in here is a spiral-bound notebook and it was basically about a 15-page notebook of what we did when I was in my previous destination. That was done through this same process. And the folks that we talked to, whether it was elected officials, it was tourism industry stakeholders, business leaders, folks in the community that say, hey, this is, the good, bad, and ugly of tourism, and this is where we need to go going forward. That process got a lot of people on the same page. And I think that's critical for us going forward, especially as we come through this pandemic. So in looking at the sheet, at the very top in terms of the purpose, it says realign organization for the next 5 years. And what that really means is, as we all talk and we say, here are key priorities of things that we need to accomplish as an organization, are we going to be able to go through and do that? So, a great example that could come out of that is, more community involvement to, tout tourism and its effectiveness. All right, do we have that capability existing within the organization? So it really prepares us for the future going forward, how we're going to accomplish everything. Our focus looking at how do we increase the visitor economic impact, how do we look at asset and product development, community infrastructure development, our partnerships, and then, and again, looking at and getting feedback from a variety of people. And the intent on this, and what I have conveyed to HCP, is not only do we do this in that we're talking to people from a variety of backgrounds. And so whether you're from North County, South County, Mid County, whether you're a large hotel, small hotel, if you're a small business, a big business, whether you're an elected official, you're staff in some of the municipalities, is get all of this opinion and really and using the expertise of HCP to kind of start putting this all down on paper. The process. The pandemic has thrown a little bit of a curveball in terms of how I would really love to do this, because I really think, the face-to-face is important because you get so much more interaction. We are still going to try to do that. It'll come further down in the process. But looking at committee stakeholder interviews, so basically about one-on-one interviews with about 36 folks that aren't going to be part of the online survey. And so we'll be putting that list together. And again, that would include members of this body, of the Tourist Development Council. Then we'd also go through and do a market-wide stakeholder survey. So this would be an online survey that would again go out to a much broader group. And again, dealing with a lot of the questions and getting responses of some of the things that we want to know. And then another one is the community sentiment survey, and this going out to residents to gain their perspectives in a very broad-based way about tourism and the impacts on our community. Going forward, and hopefully with the lessening of the pandemic, then have a strategic planning workshop where you could take a lot of the responses that we've gotten from the online and as well as the one-on-one interviews, and then really get people to talk, on a variety of different ways. And part of that is going to be assigning goals as we kind of move forward. And one of the things that I think is important is with this document that we end up coming up with is, one, identify, because there could be a lot of things, but what needs to be done immediately, what needs to be done in the midterm, and midterm being more along the lines of 2 to 3 years, and what is more long-term in nature. So that way we've got more of a clearer picture and can plan accordingly. The other element to that is really assigning a value to what the staff at Visit St. Pete Clearwater are going to be doing. And in that case, what is it that we own? In other words, we're totally responsible for making that happen. Or what is it that we need to collaborate with other organizations on to make it successful? And third, what is it that we would advocate for? And each of those carry different responsibilities. But again, looking at it from a timing standpoint and then the ownership standpoint, it helps direct us in our planning as well as our future look going forward. I have, you see committee and countywide stakeholders. I mean, the list is pretty broad, and but I want to capture as many folks as possible. My previous place, the original intent was to have this workshop, and I said I will be absolutely ecstatic if we can get 50, 60 people in the room. We had over 160. And we had people sitting at the table talking to people that hadn't talked to people in like 10 years. Some of them didn't know certain things existed. And so it started this collaborative process. And so I think, that's the case here, is getting everyone together, reaching out to as many as possible to help guide this. From a timing standpoint, is looking at January of 2021 as that kickoff. With, at this point, looking at September of 2021 would be the final presentation to this body and really the community at large. So again, I think early on when I mentioned that we were going to be going through this process, I heard loud and clear that you wanted to make sure that the Tourist Development Council folks are involved in this, and that is definitely the case. Again, from a one-on-one interview process, I'll also be reaching out as we put together a strategic plan committee And so I'll work with the chair to see if there's a couple people to be on that. Plus, some industry folks so that they're kind of aware and make sure we're hitting all the right things related to the plan. But I'm excited about the direction. Like I said, it's near and dear to my heart because it really provides the framework for us as an industry going forward the next 5 years. And I know 5 years seems a long way off, but strangely enough, it goes rather quickly. So, any questions from the folks?
Julie?
So the TDC board will be a part of the workshop?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you.
Steve, I think this is a great time in our lives as we finish this pandemic and the virus vaccinations are coming in and all, to do this 5-year assessment. And you got the experience of doing it in the past. And HCP, I guess you just dated me. It says for 35 years. I've known them and used them as ours for 35 years. Today it's on project by project. This is not the part of the company that we use, and I know that they excel in this area today. They've done a lot of work, I know, with some other counties. They do a lot with Hillsborough with the development of downtown Tampa. And keeping them accountable every couple of years, they review it and all. So I think you made a great decision to go ahead with this new process.
Madam Chair, if I might, one thing I wanted to add to this, there has already been some things done internally that was already under process, especially looking at mission and value. So the staff has been very intimately involved in this and some great things that came out of it. This is the next part of that is to take what we've done as staff and then say, all right, industry, community, are you in agreement with that? And then get that input as well outside. Because again, we might be on the same page, we might be a little bit off or completely off. And this process will help get us through all of this. So again, I look forward to releasing more information. Again, we will keep you updated and involved as members of our Tourist Development Council.
Okay.
And in terms of the tourism economic snapshot, first thing is you should notice that we have a different, it's not about 10 pages long, it's actually about 2 pages long. And this is the report looking at not only occupancy, ADR, all of the metrics that we have. We're tracking this through Google Data Studios now. And so we're able to kind of jazz it up a little bit. If you look, and again, I won't go over all the different numbers. You can see certainly what's there. The only thing that hasn't changed, and I'm hoping that by January's meeting is we'll be able to include that, is on the very back page when it comes down to vacation rentals, is we still have the data from AirDNA, and on that is that we would have it from Key Data going forward, because I was looking at it last night and pulled a report out and looked at the top markets, who was spending the most and how far out. Mike, you were talking about short-term bookings. When some of the vacation rentals, they're starting to get longer and longer, which is great, and their spend gets higher and higher. So again, it's all good data, and we'll be able to include that there. The other item I wanted to cover is also at your place, you have the Tourist Development Council meeting schedule for 2021. So we have all the dates, and Liz will make sure that she goes and sends that out to everybody to get it on your calendars. There was one date that I thought might be a conflict, and that is one related to Tourism Day up in Tallahassee, which typically falls right around the same time period we have a TDC meeting. However, we did find out last week that there will be no in-person Tourism Day in Tallahassee. Now, they might do something virtual, but they have not provided any details. But there is no day like there has been in the past.
May 18th is a Tuesday, I think.
Okay. We had to make a change. There was a conflict on that
That's
Wednesday.
on purpose, okay.
Yeah.
Julie?
Not that any of our communities are going to be doing anything at this point, but I wanted to point out that March 17th is St. Patty's Day.
So we should wear green.
Wear green and have green beer. No, I'm kidding.
Green coffee. Yeah, green too.
The other thing I just wanted to mention as I close out, and Leroy touched upon it with the story in the Miami Herald, but that's just one of many positive stories that we're starting to really see coming out talking about this area. And I can remember back, I think it was in June, we had pushed out a story and you had writers that say we really can't push Florida now. Now all of a sudden we're seeing stories, and they're great stories talking about the variety of the destination, what's here, what you can do, whether it's, I need to get a plug in. We still have, how many more days, Katie, to vote? It's to the 23rd for the pier. Got 5 days. So to have the number one, or to be the number one newest attraction. And right now we've been running neck and neck with a museum out in Colorado Springs. But we've been holding on to first for, but every once in a while we slip down to second. So you can vote every day, and once a day per device. And then the trick is per where you're at. So like if you go home, you can vote on that computer, but you can vote on your iPhone and your iPad. But let's get the piers as the number one place to go. But that's just another example of something, Ron. I read.
Where is it?
And this is for USA Today's 10 Best. And I think it's on our website where for voting purposes. At
10best.com.
There we go.
Oh, okay.
So it'd be great to go through and do that. And this morning coming in, they had top places to enjoy Christmas, and St. Pete was number 26 on that list. Now, what I don't know, it was by I think Wallet Hub or something like that. I couldn't figure out a couple of the top 10 because I thought for sure we would have been above that. But again, it's that recognition, and that's what's important going forward, especially as we come out of this pandemic, and again need to have that visibility out for potential travelers. So that's all that I have, with the exception of one item, but I'll take care of that if there's any board comments.
Any board comments? Yes, ma'am.
Just kind of wanted to follow up on, Phil, what you were saying, and congratulate the team at BSPC. Steve, I think the strategic plan is a much needed, and appreciate you, giving the direction for that, thinking of past, present, and future, and obviously a 5-year plan, as you say, sounds like a long time, but it really isn't. And I think it's a tremendous help to see taking all the information from all the sources and having the professional guidance of a company to do this, so that you end up with a well-rounded approach, as opposed to just, kind of being an internalized, here's how we're going to do things. And I think that this puts us hands and above up to a new level, and appreciate that. Thank you.
Anybody else? Okay. It's all yours again.
So a year ago in January, I had the pleasure of going in and sitting down with Commissioner Gerard to have the very first briefing of an agenda for the TDC meeting. And I remember we went through all of it, and at the end, she and I both kind of looked at each other and said, well, we're both new to this. And so that was January. And by March, the commissioner was leading an effort and quickly learning on what Zoom is, how not only to handle a Zoom meeting, but how to do everything virtual, and really guiding not only the county, but also being chair of this council. And I think in the process, Commissioner Gerard has learned a lot about tourism, but in a very different way than maybe other past chairs have had. And so on behalf of the staff and this council, we've got something for you that we want to share. I think it would be extremely appropriate given
The trip to Germany?
yeah. And it was February's meeting, and we were talking about we're going to ITB. She wanted more of a briefing on it. We got everything done, and then we kept hearing this trickle of COVID and what is it and that. And by the end of February, it was a no-go, and then it all went south from there. But it's on its way back up. But what we have for you, I think, would be appropriate. So let me get my mask on.
It's a new mask.
Iron mask.
Right.
It's not red for Christmas, but blue because it's a great brand color.
All right. Well,
But
thank you.
if you will open that to show the group, and I think you will find it extremely appropriate given the time that we're in right now.
Okay.
But again, I appreciate her guidance this year. I think she's done phenomenally well with this group, especially since we had to fly by our seat of the pants in terms of having virtual meetings, which had never been done before, to getting back to in-person. And again, I just appreciate her guidance in all of this.
Well, it's been fun, I think. Okay, who wrapped this one up? Jeez.
We had to kill some time, so we said, let's wrap it a lot.
I guess so. There's a lot of tape on that thing. Oh, wow. Okay. This is our Rise to Shine campaign. Thank you.
So for those,
Very nice.
So for those that, if you, I know you can't see it back where you're at, it basically brings in Zoom. So she's got.
Everybody's muted.
Everybody's muted. She's got Salvador Dali in there. She's got a dolphin, Winter the Dolphin in there. So again, really looking at the destination. But I think that was more than appropriate given the year that we've had. So thank you for your service and leadership.
My pleasure. And I see our new chair sitting back there. Yep. Ready. Okay.
That's
And
all I
guess
have.
we are adjourned. Merry Christmas, everyone. Or happy
Thank you for your
holidays.
service, Pat.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Merry Christmas.